Good evening, and calling the meeting to order. Welcome to the West Hartford Public Schools Board of Education meeting. It is Thursday, April the 4th, 2024. Charlotte, may you please begin by calling the roll?
Mr. Gagnon,
Present.
Mr. Goldman,
Here.
Dr. Harris,
Here.
Ms. Merrimon,
Here.
Mrs. Nezarella,
Present.
Dr. Thomas Farquharson,
Here.
Mrs. Yagelov,
Present.
Student Representative Liam Wright,
Here.
and Student Representative Chris Ramal.
Present.
Thank you so much. And Chris, may you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We do not have a revision to the agenda order, and now it is time for public communications. This is where we're able to hear from you, your thoughts, your questions, your suggestions. Each individual is allowed 3 minutes to speak, and we ask for when you go to the podium to please share your name and your town of residence. Please be mindful of Charlotte, who will hold up a yellow card when you have 1 minute remaining in your time, and when your time is expired, you will see a red card. We ask for you please to respectfully take your seat at that time. Be mindful that we are attentively listening to what you are sharing. However, it is board policy that we do not respond to comments as they're being made. With this being the first meeting of the month, we are receiving comments on agenda and non-agenda items. However, for our awareness, just want to remind us of what tonight's agenda items include. That is adoption of the 2024-2025 Board of Education budget and approval of financial report period ending February 29th, 2024. So we're going to begin by prioritizing hearing from those speaking on agenda items. And I have a list here. And I apologize in advance if I mispronounce anyone's name. First, we have Steph Dominello, last initial D.
Hi, my name is Stephanie Dominello, and I live on Stoner Drive in West Hartford. Thank you for taking the time to listen to the community concerns about the proposed budget. Before I begin, I'd like to acknowledge that the community response to the proposed elimination of Miss Amanda Gohler's position has been truly moving. It is clear that she has impacted so many lives, and I urge you to keep her position in our district. I'm here to continue to advocate for smaller class sizes at Duffy. During the budget workshop last week, it was mentioned that some letters written by Duffy parents were unsupportive of our teachers. And I want to be clear that we are so grateful for our amazing teachers at Duffy. It is a huge part of why we are working so hard to do this. We want to keep our wonderful teachers at Duffy, and we want our teachers to have equitable class sizes with the rest of our district. As a Duffy parent, I was heartened to hear serious discussion about Duffy's disproportionately large class sizes during the budget workshop. I wanted to respond to some information that was discussed during last week's budget workshop. A board member expressed concerns about Duffy's large class size and asked if smaller class size would improve student achievement and help close our achievement gap. As a Duffy parent said last week, a 2016 study found that children in smaller class sizes achieve better outcomes, both academic and otherwise, and that class size reduction can be an effective strategy for closing racially or socioeconomically based achievement gaps. With Duffy having one of the largest achievement gaps of the elementary schools in our district, why not implement smaller class sizes as a strategy for closing the gap? Research has proven its effectiveness. Further, our district is clearly aware of the many benefits of smaller class sizes since we use reduced class size guidelines at our magnet schools. The question was asked about the physical capacity for more class sections at Duffy. And after further research, we know that Duffy has the physical capacity for 25 class sections. We are projected to have 22 class sections next year, so we have the capacity for 3 more class sections than what is proposed in next year's budget. A board member said that she has taught in a classroom of 28 students, and with the right classroom management, classes can feel smaller. With all due respect, our student population has changed, and a class size of 28 is not in the best interest of our students or our teachers. As Duffy parents said last week, behaviors are different now in our post-COVID world where student attention is fractured by technology. Additionally, our student population is 20% special needs and will continue to grow. This is further evidence that our guidelines no longer meet our student needs. Additionally, with the elimination of school counselors, we are only adding to our teachers' workload. Teacher burnout is real. As a former K-12 teacher, I can attest to this. We are not asking for special treatment at Duffy. We are asking for equity. As I said last week, due to our size, the guidelines are inherently biased and promote larger class sizes at Duffy. This inequity is not fair to our teachers, our children, and especially our most vulnerable students, who are likely most affected by larger class sizes and would benefit the most from class size reductions. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Mary Ellen Doyle.
Hello. My name is Mary Ellen Doyle, and I'm a resident of West Hartford. Communities and neighborhoods grow and change, especially in our city post-COVID. According to data available, less than 10 years ago, Duffy had similar demographics to Bugby School. At that time, in 2015, our demographics were similar, though Bugby test scores were considerably higher. It is hard to tell exactly why this was, but a possible and likely factor was class size. Demographics of these schools differ now, with free and reduced lunch percentage at Duffy being twice as high as Bugby. Our student population of special needs is 20% and expected to grow. The achievement gap is one of the largest of the elementary schools in our district. While we cannot control all of the factors affecting students, we can control class size. We need to support our amazing teachers and staff so they can effectively reach our equally amazing students. The entire Duffy population deserves the same opportunities as the other schools in our district and an education equitable to those in smaller classes. Cutting budget, teachers, and counselors from Duffy, a school that is already operating with materially larger class sizes versus other schools in the district, is inequitable, unjust, and a failure to our students. The current structure of large classrooms in a large school doesn't work. We have the physical space within the building. Don't turn your back on the children of Duffy. Please find the budget so the achievement gap does not widen for Duffy students. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Andrea DeMaria.
Good evening. My name is Andrea DeMaria, and I live on Mountain Terrace Road in West Hartford. I have a first and fourth grader at Duffy, and in addition to be a parent to these kids, I'm also a room parent, a library helper, and a PTO member. In these roles, I have felt firsthand how the changes in class size have affected the kids, especially in the difference from my kindergartner going into first grade. When I go in as mystery reader or help coordinate class parties, it is far more difficult to do in a way that doesn't limit activity, doesn't limit movement, and doesn't limit the ability to celebrate. Simple things such as getting all the kids to physically be able to fit in the space can be very distracting and take more time away from the fun, and it is near impossible to provide a consistent experience for each child. I recognize that these things seem really trivial, and that is because they are, compared to what we're asking our teachers to do in the exact same circumstances. I'm accountable for providing a few fun activities every few months, and our teachers are accountable for providing and shaping the academic and social success for all their students. The same problems occur for them, but with much higher consequence. Please do what is in your power to give what is right to the children in this community. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Julie Copey, last initial K.
Good evening. My name is Julie Kopek, and I live on Stoner Drive. I am here tonight to speak on behalf of my two sons who attend Duffy Elementary School and its administrators, teachers, counselors, and support staff. I'd like to begin this evening with sharing two quick stories. The first one took place last summer when I went to a work gathering for my husband. I was chatting with some moms who live in Glastonbury, and the topic of schools came up in discussion. They asked me where I lived and what school my children went to. I told them I live in West Hartford, and both my boys attend Duffy, to which they responded, "Oh, you are so lucky. We hear Duffy is the best." Also, one day, I was getting my hair cut at a salon here in town. I was simply chatting with my hairdresser, and she asked me where my kids go to school. I told her Duffy, and she said, "Oh, all my clients tell me it's the best." Duffy has built a reputation of being the best because it is led by our thoughtful, responsive, and extraordinary principal, Mrs. Christy Laverty, and held up by the dedicated, tireless, and highly competent teachers and staff. Duffy is so well known that parents want to move and live in our district so their children can attend Duffy. This school is exemplary and a success, and something that I ask you as board members to consider. It is evident that most successful businesses reward and incentivize their employees for a job well done. We should be celebrating Duffy, but instead, you are asking them to teach larger class sizes and produce the same results, all while decreasing resources. With all due respect, this is simply bad business practice, as it lowers morale, leads to burnout, and negatively affects our children's academic success and social and emotional well-being. I implore you to please change your current budget proposal and retain the class sections, teachers, and counselors as they are. I thank you for allowing me the privilege to speak tonight.
Thank you. Next, we have John Moores, last initial M.
Good evening. My name is John Moss, and I'm a resident of West Hartford and a proud parent from King Philip's School and Aiken School. Last week, I spoke with you about the importance of preserving our elementary school counselors, as well as some, if not all, of our elementary curriculum specialists. In the board discussion that followed public comment, I appreciated the consideration that clearly went into weighing the different options. As a resident, it helped me to see how these goals might be accomplished. Dr. Thomas Farquharson spoke about the importance of prioritizing needs over wants. We need our elementary school counselors. They help all of our students, and they support and the support they provide at the pre-K to 5 level will rise to help students and teachers in all buildings as time goes on. When we consider the value-added model, there can be no question as to the value of our school counselor. The cost of pay-to-play has been incorporated into our general fund from ESSER funds. And while I absolutely support removing barriers to allowing any interested students to participate in athletics, the total elimination of pay-to-play is a want, not a need. This doesn't help all students, only those who choose to participate in sports. There is value added, But does this even begin to compare to the value of school counselors at our youngest levels? Subsidizing pay to play will cost $217,000 in our general fund, nearly half of the $500,000 needed to preserve our elementary counselors. Ms. Hewitt explained that there have also been savings in healthcare estimated at $250,000. When you combine those, we're at $467,000, which is getting awfully close to covering the cost to preserve our school counselors. Mr. Vicina said that the proposed assistant principals would focus on Tier 1 support for students with challenging behavioral needs, and that we need to train them to have the proper skills to work with those students. We could absolutely do this, but we can also keep the existing counselors who already have those skill sets. And at the same time, if we're also eliminating the curriculum specialists who work to support all of our teachers and all of our students, we're losing yet more supports. If the decision to transition from curriculum specialists to assistant principals proceeds, please make this a gradual transition. Go from having one per building to one per two or even three buildings so we can see the impact of lessening instructional supports available to our teachers. Let's reassess this a year from now. As true as it is that that the needs for the supports that I'm describing predated the pandemic, we must recognize that the needs now are arguably greater than when the ESSER funds first started to come to us. I know that elementary school counselors were not part of the original plan, and that was originally seen as a short-term solution. And while we're looking at a gradual change to pre-pandemic levels, our students have not returned. We must meet students where they are. And if our board were to take action that reverts mental health staffing to old levels, that leaves pay to play fully subsidized, unlike pre-pandemic practices that were in place for over 17 years. That would
Excuse me,
show.
sir. I'm so sorry. Please finish your sentence.
Sure
Your
thing.
time has expired.
I recognize that while this board has heard public comments advocating for the funding of a number of incredibly worthwhile issues, I ask you to prioritize needs over wants, because it does cost a lot to do this, but it also costs a great deal when we start cutting our ability to meet the core of our district's ability to meet our students' needs. Thank you.
Thank you. We next have Ruby Diaz.
Hello, my name is Ruby, and I live in 21 Royal Oak Drive here in West Hartford. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm here to join the many families who showed up last week to support maintaining the Family and Community Engagement Coordinator position in its existing form. I'm a Smith parent, I'm in PTO leadership, and I'm also a daughter of immigrants, and know too well that safe connections like the one Smith and Charter Oak families are making with Amanda are crucial to the evolution of the immigrant story. In 1980, my mother and grandparents boarded a boat with only the clothes on their backs. Motion sick, terrified, and hopeful, they landed in the Florida Keys with nothing but optimism and grit. Miles away in Miami, an old friend who had managed to leave the country years prior was listening to the radio as the names of the families who's just landed were being listed. He recognized the name. The Brusos family had arrived and were being housed in a big stadium with fold-out mats as they figured out where to send them next. He saw a for rent sign in his neighborhood, and without thinking about it twice, he rented the small apartment for his friends. He called my grandmother's sister, who was already in the country, and shared excitedly the news that my family had made it to the United States. A series of safe connections and divine coincidences, if you ask me, ultimately led to a reunion years in the making. I didn't live this story myself, but it lives in my bones as I've heard it shared about 1,000 times in family gatherings. I share this to echo the immigrant story and point to the importance of preserving those safe social connections. Every immigrant remembers how they got here. Often it's a journey riddled with trauma and hardship. Every immigrant remembers the safe connections that helped them make sense of this big, new, unfamiliar, and complicated world that they now have to survive in and raise kids in. A few years ago, the Economic Policy Institute studied education inequalities and found that children's social class is one of the most significant predictors, if not the most significant predictor, of their educational success. It notes that performance gaps by social class take root in the earliest years of children's lives, and they fail to narrow in the years that follow. Kids who start behind stay behind and rarely are able to make up for lost ground. The study also demonstrated that providing kids and their families with targeted support both within and outside of school enabled disadvantaged communities to make progress toward a range of goals. We have an opportunity here to change the trajectory of student success for years to come by finding a position that in practice is making a world of a difference. When I was in nursing school, we learned about the social determinants of health to better serve patients within their social context. You can't, for example, tell a patient with a new diabetes diagnosis that they should improve their diet and not address food insecurity, for example. That would be tone deaf and futile. In thinking of what I wanted to share tonight, I came across Healthy People 2030. It's an initiative that sets goals for the next decade, and it's done by the US Department of Health and Human Services. I found it interesting that it listed increased social and community support as a goal. I think I've lost my time, but just wanted to read my last sentence. For the families who shared testimony last week, Amanda has provided a feeling of home away from home, a safe base from which to begin to navigate a new world, and I urge you to continue to fund her position. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Jeff, last initial K.
My name is Jeff Kivlin, reside in Stoner Drive in West Hartford. I have a 6-year-old in kindergarten at Duffy currently. Obviously, it's basically come down to 3 main topics. Class sizes at Duffy, Amanda's job, which seems to have a huge impact on that part of our town, and then the counselors. I'll start with the counselors. The children are not the same. COVID took a huge effect on their psyches, their development at the most fragile times. There were no play dates. There was no after-school activities. There was masking where they didn't get to see interactions as normal children. History will write whether it was right or wrong. We can debate that until we're blue in the face, but it changed them. Counselors may be a luxury in some people's eyes, but I think it falls more in the need category. And we're not talking multi-million dollars here. As far as Amanda's job, $85,000 I think was the estimate put out. That's a rounding error in a $200 million budget. Better supply purchasing could probably pay for that by itself. As far as class sizes go, it's a much different and a much tougher challenge to tackle, but it's there. If money wasn't an issue, would we be doing it? I think the answer to that is yes. Is the money in the town to do it? Absolutely. It's just making it the priority, asking the town council. With that said also, Ethan, I'd like to thank you for that board discussion, asking the granular question of getting into the reimbursement on special education from the state of Connecticut. Great question. And it came out that it was about $2.5 million that the state short-funded us. I never knew that. I guarantee nobody in this room had any clue the state short-changed us $2.5 million last year and the year before. This happened at a time when the state was putting out billion-dollar surpluses. It's kind of crazy. $1 billion surplus, and they are not paying us at the rate. $2.5 million is a huge hole in our budget. It's only going to get worse. You guys need to be screaming at the rooftops to educate all of us. I don't know how you do it, Paul, but you got to figure out a way to get it out to us so that we can be your advocates, so that we can go to town council, so that we can hold our state reps and senators accountable, whether it's Derek, Tammy, Katie, whoever, so that we can write to them and say, this is unacceptable that you're not reimbursing us at the rates that it's supposed to be statutory. That $2.5 million would change a lot of things in this budget, wouldn't it? Counselors, no problem. Amanda's job, no problem. A couple extra teachers here or there across the system, no problem. It's all paid for. Please, let us know so we can help you. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Molly, last initial T.
Hello, my name is Molly Town, and I live at 10 Glendale Road in West Hartford. I'm speaking to continue my advocacy for Duffy Elementary School. And before I dive into class sizes, I would like to be very clear that our teachers at Duffy are top-notch. Our quest for smaller class sizes is not because our teachers aren't capable. We are looking for equity for our students and for our teachers. And to make it very simple, it's math, and there should be a consistent student-to-teacher ratio across all of our schools across the whole district. As I stated last Wednesday, Duffy has 6 sections in grades 4 and 5 with the largest student population of 146 students, while Norfelt and Brayburn have 6 sections, but with 23 and 22 less students than Duffy at 123 and 124 students. Charter Oak has 7 class sections, but with 4 less students than Duffy at 142. District-wide, there are 12 schools with class sections of 24 plus students, and Duffy makes up half of these class sections, with all of our 4th and 5th grades falling into this category. These numbers are astounding, they're inequitable, and they're unfair to our students. And like I said earlier, it's math, and it's just not adding up. We are hoping that the board will revisit the class size policy 6250. Due to the size of Duffy as a large school, we are consistently feeling the effects of these large class sizes. They're much larger than other schools in West Hartford. And it doesn't seem fair that Duffy, with 200 more students than other schools, that Duffy has 200 more students than other schools, and the answer always seems to be, well, Duffy's the largest school in the district. We need to do better for our students. It's not coincidental that the SBAC math scores show that Duffy has the largest achievement gap in the district. There is countless research available showing that small class sizes is the answer to this problem. Again, there should be consistent student-to-teacher ratios across the district. Small class sizes are essential for academic success. I'm asking that until a long-term solution can be thoroughly considered by the board, such as redistricting, which I know is hard, but it is the right thing to do, that the district use the 23 student cap that the SR funds afforded us, keeping our class sizes manageable for our teachers. And this will be crucial if you do decrease the mental health support next year across the district. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Kat, last initial L.
Hi, I'm Kate Leary. I live at 202 Ridgewood. First of all, I just want to say thank you so much for what you do. I know budget cuts are never easy to make. However, I do urge you to consider an alternative solution to avoid increasing class sizes and eliminating the school counselors. My daughter is a first grader at Duffy School, and my other daughter will be a kindergartner in the fall. The part of school that my daughter talks about the most is lunch bunch. While on a family vacation to Disneyland last year, she asked me if she was going back to lunch bunch soon. So I was like, wow, okay, we're at Disney. Once a week, part of her 504 plan, she gets to spend time at lunch with Miss Kylie, the school counselor. She loves it. It gives her a space to express her feelings and teaches her strategies to cope and be successful in the classroom. Miss Kylie is an active participant in conferences, and her perspectives are valuable and vital to educating my daughter as a whole child. During a time of mental health crisis in this country, removing school counselors from elementary settings potentially have dire consequences for West Hartford. I recently toured Connecticut Children's with the CEO, Jim Schmerling. Doctors there say they have never seen anything like that. They need to keep up with the need, and so they're adding embedded mental health professionals to each area of the hospital. How could we possibly consider taking ours away? Unfortunately, I was on the ground in Newtown every day for 2 weeks after 20 first graders and 6 adult staff were killed inside Sandy Hook Elementary School. As a reporter for Channel 3, I continued to cover the shootings for months. One reoccurring theme was mental health. We need these supports in schools to keep kids safe. It's also my understanding that the cuts you plan to pass tonight will also increase class sizes at Duffy. I'm concerned for my daughter's education, but more for the teachers. I have a lot of friends who've quit their jobs recently because they just can't take it anymore. So I ask, again, budget cuts are really hard, but please look at something else. Be creative where you can and try to find an alternative solution instead of reducing these counselors or eliminating them rather, and keep the class sizes as small as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. That's all who I have signed up on the list here. However, we'll ask anyone in the audience who may care to speak on an agenda item. Again, is there anyone in the audience? Please come to the podium.
Hi, my name is Sarah Balaj. I live on 20 Farm Hill Road in West Hartford, Connecticut. My speech won't be as great as all of the ones before me because it's not as well prepared, but I did want to tell a story about my son, who is in kindergarten at Duffy, who came to school from a preschool that did not have as much structure. He wasn't quite ready to learn in the fashion that, is what you would hope and expect. He felt bad when he didn't get reading as fast as his peers, and it lowered his confidence. Miss Kylie, the school counselor, stepped in with the help of his teacher, Mrs. Small, and he has started to attend her lunch bunch, and it has changed his life and maybe the trajectory of his entire career in his elementary school, junior high, high school, and beyond. She has built his confidence by talking with him and giving him strategies. In partnership with his teacher, they have spent countless hours thinking about him, working with us, and helping him be successful. There was a period of time where he didn't want to go to school. He said, "I hate school," and that broke my heart. And what really it came down to is he was not confident. He was not comfortable, and Miss Kylie changed that for him. So now he loves school, and he talks about lunch bunch. We also went to Disney World. Lunch bunch also came up as a topic quite recently. So my story is simply to bring a real tale to life about this impact on my child. And what I do also want to recognize is that if my son's behavior was causing disruptions in the class, that's taking his teacher's attention away from all those other students. And it affects not only him, his teacher, but every other student in that class. And they're no longer affected by that because he is behaving and enjoying himself and having fun. So it is quite impactful. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to speak on an agenda item? Please come to the podium.
My name is Sarah Dolan. I live in West Hartford. Thank you for your careful and thoughtful discussion after the public comments at last week's budget workshop. We feel our voices are being heard, and we're grateful for your time and consideration that counselor cuts and class size increases will greatly impact schools. It was indicated at the last meeting that the STAR research might not be relevant due to its date and demographics, and that Hawksby's quasi-experimental study in Connecticut might be more relevant to a conversation regarding reducing class size caps in West Hartford. But according to the Brookings Institution, who did a summary of the high-quality research available, they said that because the pool of credible studies is small and the individual studies differ in the setting, method, grades, and magnitude of the size variation that is studied, conclusions have to be tentative. But it appears that very large class size reductions and the order of magnitude of 7 to 10 fewer students per class can have significant long-term effects on student achievement and other meaningful outcomes. These effects seem to be the largest when introduced at the earliest grades and for students from less advantaged family backgrounds. I'd also like to note that if class size didn't matter to achievement and teacher retention, we would not support the reduced class size caps in our magnet schools. Class size matters to how well teachers can reach their students and how well students can learn. We know this. Ms. Nazarella said that some of the letters from Duffy parents bothered her because she knows the wonderful things that teachers do no matter how many kids are in their class. A class of 20 can feel like a class of 30. It's all about classroom management and relationships. I respectfully disagree with that narrative. It's true that when I was teaching, I had dream cohorts, and even if they were on the bigger side, we still had great discussions and relationships. But I've also taught 32 students in overcrowded classrooms where seating is swished and where I've modified assignments simply based on what I could read in return in a timely manner. There are practicalities that teachers deal with when there are 25 students, as one Duffy class was this year, compared to 16 as another elementary school had this same year. Our campaign for smaller class sizes is teacher and student centered. I have received emails and feedback at sports and school events, and the stories parents and teachers have regarding their students' class size concerns are real. Mr. Vicinis cited that with current class size caps, the research surrounding the effect of instructional strategies and student relationships on student achievement is the best way forward, and that changing class size guidelines is significant in terms of cost and space, and redistricting will not be universally popular. And Dr. Morrow noted that there is not a lot of excess space in any of our buildings. The nature of education has shifted over time. We have large class sizes and a class size cap that is outdated with the current stresses on our student population, as well as outdated buildings that can't accommodate the reality of modern education. But we don't seem to have a strategic plan to remedy any of these issues. I asked Dr. Morrow at a PTC meeting last year whether West Hartford elementary schools would be rebuilt as Charter Oak was. Most parents I know were assuming that was part of a long-term plan for the district, so I felt it was important to gain clarity. But he said, no, that's not part of the plan. If we can't lower class size caps, can't accommodate smaller classes, and don't have the intention to redistrict or rebuild schools, I would encourage the board to take a broader look at what we can do and take that vision to the town. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak on an agenda item? I'll ask one last time. Anyone else who would like to speak on an agenda item?
She really wanted to say something. Okay, let's see.
Hi, my name is Sophia Diaz. I live in West Hartford, and I'm from Smith. No money spent, no supporting students and families is ever wasted. I ask that you consider bringing Amanda's position back into the budget. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? All right. Now we're going to move to those speaking on non-agenda items, and I will start with those who've signed up on the list. And we have Mark Walsh.
Mark Walsh, 33 Huckleberry Lane. First, I got to say, this is some kind of cruel joke. I have a local TV reporter, and it's not here to cover this very serious matter. In the past year and a half, I've come up here following the suicide of the bullied 11-year-old over at Bristow. I've appeared before you several times in the attempt to facilitate change in the way officials communicate and mitigate tragic events in our town and in our schools. And I can confidently tell everybody here, nothing has changed. Let me give you a couple of examples. Hall High School, last year, April 6th, racist graffiti found in the boys' bathroom threatening the black community. November 17th, racist flyers taped on walls targeting the Jewish community. I requested police reports on both incidents. I emailed Paul here, the school superintendent. He emailed me back on November 14th last year. There have been no hate crimes. Well, just 4 weeks ago, I heard back from the records department across the way that the two incidents, their investigations are not complete. Paul, I have no idea how you came to that conclusion when you have open investigations. The other thing is, I want you to think about this. This Saturday will mark 1 full year that the investigation opened for the graffiti on the wall. I have the police report for the 11-year-old who committed suicide, okay? They only took just less than 3 months to come to this conclusion. 3 days to investigate. The rest of the time it went to the ME, and they waited for his report to close the case. It's disgusting on so many levels, I can't even tell you. Let's move on to King Philip. Joy Wright, the principal, emails the parents. We are very disturbed in the rise in graffiti and comments in school. Comments and drawings have targeted individuals based on race and religion. Sounds a lot like what happened over at Bristow, doesn't it? So Joy Wright, the principal's action plan, 4-part, consequences, education, counseling, and my favorite, community involvement. The community has no idea what happened there, because guess what? I asked for the police report for that 4 weeks ago. They told me West Hartford Police and KP are exempt from disclosure. Now, that principal made it clear there were several incidents. We don't know how many, what was done, what was said. Now, here's what I'm going to tell you. Public safety, it will remain compromised. Trust me. As long as, and I call you guys the masters of illusion. You know why? Because outside this town, people think we are wrapped tight with public safety and education, and we are so far from it. And I don't know how you, and I'm going with not just you here on the board, Mayor Cantor. We have Dallas Dodge. He's the town attorney. He's the grandmaster of illusion. And then you go on and on. But you know what? Little do they know on the outside of this town just how dirty things are and how quiet. And all of you just sit there. And anybody that was around for that suicide over there, you should either resign or I hope somebody votes you out. Because it really, it's beyond
Excuse me,
disgusting.
your time has expired. Next, we have Addie Lorden.
If there's children in the room, this is your trigger warning for them to be removed. I too am speaking on the Bristow suicide. On December 1st, 2021, an 11-year-old little girl, a Bristow Middle School student, asked to be excused from class and proceeded to the restroom, where she hung herself with a lanyard, where she was left alone and undiscovered for 10 minutes. On Wednesday, March 27th, 2024, I received an email notification from the West Hartford Patch that a lawsuit had been filed by the family against West Hartford Town and West Hartford BOE. The town and the BOE were served on November 30th, 2023. The lawsuit was filed on 12/05/23, and a notice of appearance was filed on 1/16/24 by West Hartford for counsel that they had retained for this matter. Nowhere is there any note, record, meeting, vote to retain counsel anywhere on the Town of West Hartford website, the BOE website. Nowhere were the public informed of this except on the West Hartford Patch. Finance Director Elizabeth Hewitt testified in a separate matter that she is in charge of the Bristow Lottery. I wonder did the Office of Administration warn her, alert her, that this little girl had been tormented and targeted in Wolcott, and that there may be issues if these children were placed in Bristow together. Was a safety plan put in place? Because her parents had come to you, had come to the Office of Administration and told you what was going on. Andrew Morrow has been here in the Office of Administration since 2014. Chairperson Farquharson, you've been here since 2018. Was any plan put in place to make sure that these children's path did not cross? No. Not only did they end up in the same school, but they ended up in the same math class. Put in front of her tormentor. It was during math class that she asked to be excused, that she walked down a hall to a restroom and hung herself because she could not take it anymore. Our children are not safe within the walls of the school. You hide these atrocities. You hide these horrible tragedies from the public. And then you waste our tax money to hide them further and to defame the family and to denigrate the parents who come to you, myself included, with serious complaints. And they're reduced to, oh, it's a coincidence. It's nothing major. Please tell that family that their child's life is not important.
Is there anyone else? That's all who we have who've signed up speaking on non-agenda items. Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to speak on a non-agenda item? I will ask one last time. Anyone who would like to speak on a non-agenda item? Okay, we're going to pause and close on public communications. Now moving on to non-staff communications and reports. This is where we're able to hear from our student representatives sharing about their respective schools. Let us first begin with Liam, please, sharing about Hall.
Yes, so there's much going on in the Hall community. To start, Eurotour is going to Germany on Sunday, which includes our concert jazz band and our choralier group. And the Celisti group, which is our advanced orchestral group, is prepping to go to Ireland. Spring sports have also started. Track had their first dual meet against Northwest Catholic. Both girls and boys won the meet, and there were 2 school records broken. Dom Rousseau and Maddie Peterson, both in the javelin, throwing 118 feet and 7 inches and 169 feet respectively. Girls lacrosse just won their opener against Windsor just a couple of hours ago, and Hall baseball also won their first game against Stamford. The International Save a Life Tour visited Hall wellness classes where students used a driving simulator to learn the risks of distracted driving. And juniors just wrapped up their junior planning that went on during quarter 3 with a senior panel where older students answered questions and shared advice on post-secondary options. Now we are all gearing up and excited for spring break. Thank you.
Thank you, Liam. Chris, please, sharing about Conard.
So for Conard, the same case of the all the groups going on their tours to Europe, and I believe the Conard and Hall Latin programs have also combined on a trip to Italy. And for Conard, the Conard boys hockey team won the Division III state championship a few weeks ago. There's been one for sorry about that. A few first place and second place prizes in the high school Mandarin poetry contest. On the topic of world language, the World Language Honor Society is having their inductions later next week, later after break, where we'll be featuring Latin, Spanish, French, American Sign Language, Mandarin. And in our arts program, 2 students were honored with the annual Cass Arts Award for outstanding leadership and excellence in instrumental arts. And the Conard Concert Jazz Band Conard Concert Jazz Band participated in Essentially Ellington, a competition which is a regional festival at Greenwich High School, and they won multiple awards, including Outstanding Band. We had 18 students accepted into the All-State Music Ensemble, and through this they showed their musical talent and dedication, and yeah.
Thank you, Chris. I love how you end with yeah. But I want to say yeah to both of you because you remind us of why we're here, and we're so proud of both of you and your respective schools. So thank you so very much. Now moving on to unfinished business, where we have adoption of the 2024-2025 Board of Education budget. Seeking a motion that the Board of Education review the superintendent's proposed budget in the amount of $201,303,856, make revisions as necessary, and adopt the 2024-2025 Board of Education budget. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Jason. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Shannon. Discussion. So, teammates, here we are. Again, we have 3 primary charges. One of them is adopting a budget. We have had, over the course of the past several weeks, the proposed budget initially. We had an initial budget workshop to get more granular details as to the budget. And then we had a second budget workshop to share more questions and receive more insight. But importantly, in addition to that, we have received voices from the community, voices from those who have written in, voices from those who have spoken here, voices who are exercising their right to advocate for whom we are charged to serve. And so we take all of this information collectively together to help us come up with a sound decision. Now, we know that a sound decision is not an easy one. We have been saying for the past 4 years that this day would come, and it would be a difficult one. because we know that there are many line items, many funding resources that are not readily available to us. However, in spite of the difficult choices, we must not lose sight of what our charge is and whom we are here to serve. And so with that, we will open it up for discussion, and decisions. Thank you so much, Liz. Passing to you for a moment, or passing to our superintendent, please. Thank you.
Thanks, Lorna. Excuse the frogginess in my throat. It sounds worse than it is. I wanted to certainly echo the thanks for the community engagement in the budget process. This is my first budget sitting in this chair, not my first time kind of going through to help support this, but it's certainly a more humbling experience and a more daunting task, and with great respect to the conversation and all of you and the decisions you will make tonight. But I really just wanted to, again, between today, I think we received some of the greatest volume of email in terms of some of the advocacy for different components of the budget, and I do appreciate that, and I especially appreciate the comments that are made that accompany those emails that talk about the amazing work of our dedicated teachers, of our dedicated staff, and so it's with great respect that we enter into this process. I wanted to remind the board of two big factors that I think provide you some degree of flexibility this evening, and/or some pieces that kind of weigh on the budget overall. A piece of news that I shared by email as soon as it was available. So the first is kind of the good news. We mentioned at the second workshop that we had received a favorable updated projection on the cost of the healthcare account. We're a part of the state partnership plan. It's a big group healthcare plan across the state, and it affords us some flexibility. And we did get a favorable update to that budget. We had previously budgeted everything at basically at a 5%, and while dental and the Medigap insurance came in at 5%, we received a more favorable projection of 3% for the retirees and 2% for active members, and that affords us somewhere in the neighborhood, Liz will correct me if I misspeak, of $250,000 in flexibility should we need it. We can always apply that towards healthcare, but I think there's some flexibility there. And the other news, which I think is poignant relative to some of the public's comment, that as recently as Tuesday of this week, we received an update from the state that was unfavorable related to the excess cost, which has been something that we've talked about here. We had previously mentioned that while we were supposed to be getting, by statute, certainly no less than 85% of our excess cost reimbursement from the state, we were projected to get 68%. An updated projection let us know that we'll be receiving only 66.7%. So a shortfall upon a shortfall, so it creates an additional hole of approximately $132,000 on top of where we are, and it's about $1.6 million from the 85% funding, which, as we've explained, we've put $1.5 million into the budget in the tuition line, essentially to support for that. So I wanted to preface with that information. There's still flexibility for us on either, in either direction, but I just wanted to give you that as an upfront kind of a comment of where we stand. And in terms of our process tonight, it's my recollection and understanding that as you discuss items and vote on them, anything that you're voting to change, we're here to talk to you about the impact. We will list out each item, its vote, whether it's adopted, and we will demonstrate kind of in real time for you the impact on the overall number. So with that, no corrections. I'll turn it back to you, Madam Chairperson.
Thank you so much, Mr. Racines. All right, teammates. Claire.
I would like to make a motion to reinstate the Family Engagement Specialist and Homeschool Liaison to this year's budget.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion. So the motion on the floor?
Yes. Question, are we going to vote one-on-one, or are we going to look at it in totality?
Well, we will.
It's the same position. I'm just using both names.
No, I'm
Okay.
good with that.
So what we'll do is we will, with each proposed motion, we will vote on whether to apply. If the motion passes, we will apply it to the budget, and then we'll move on to whatever other motion may be suggested.
I think Ethan's asking if there's going to be a roll call.
Well, no, what I was looking for more was, to me, there's the whole budget, and there's parts of it. And it seems like it's more beneficial to have a discussion on the whole budget, or if we can't, we can't. Then if you do one, it becomes...
I hear you. I think it's a both and. I think we have started with the one proposed motion that's on the floor and has been seconded, so we're in discussion. But this, in totality, this is an opportunity to discuss the budget, whether it's a specific line item or just in general. We certainly know when it comes time for voting, we do want to be able to hear thoughts on why we're voting in a particular way. But this is helping us kind of comb through what the content may be.
But then when you also state your reason for voting, it can include other things about the budget. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So to start the discussion, I think it's very clear there's a huge community support for this role at Charter Oak and Smith. When families are struggling, it's difficult for children to learn and succeed. Language barriers, health access, and hardship require help in ways that a traditional school model can't always meet. Since this was grant-funded part-time position before the pandemic, I'm hoping that we can be successful in offsetting some of the costs through other sources, but at this time, I'd like to add it, as you did on the board, for this position.
Other thoughts? Jason, and then LaToya.
Sorry. I think it's clear from the moving testimonials we've heard over the last few weeks, we've received by email over the last few weeks, that this is a position that makes a real difference in our schools, Charter Oak and Smith. And I think even more so, it makes a difference to the most vulnerable members of our community. Populations that are already navigating what is for these families very difficult and uncertain times, and helping them to fully integrate into not only our schools but into our communities. And given the need and importance of this position in meeting that need, I vote in favor of that as well.
LaToya.
Yeah. So I vote in favor for it because West Hartford has a beautiful and diverse community and families from all over that are coming here to ensure quality education for their kids. And keeping this position at its full-time capacity supports our continuous expansion of our diverse populations and ensures that we remain aligned with our commitment to equity and inclusion through access to resources that enhance both student and family experience here in West Hartford. Thank you.
Other thoughts? Yes, Shannon.
So similar to what I shared last time, I think that a big theme of trying to address this budget in a holistic manner is to think about the cost-benefit analysis and where we can see the greatest return for where we do need to make really tough decisions. And this position just is such a clear need with respect to both the Smith and the Charter Oak communities. I was very I work in my day job in public schools, and seeing the incredible prevalence of English learners across the board and realizing how much growth there's been here in West Hartford. I don't think there's an awareness completely of how many Spanish speakers. There's, between those two schools alone, 192 Spanish speakers and 61 Portuguese speakers. I am originally from Spain myself, and my father is still to this day learning the English language and navigating the process of living in this country. And so I just see that there's such clear alignment with the goals of the district and even the strategic plan that West Hartford Public Schools has laid out, specifically focusing on areas of family and community engagement and culturally relevant student-centered instruction, as well as support for educational initiatives that reduce racial, ethnic, and economic isolation. So in this role, like as one speaker noted, is a rounding error. I see no reason why we would not advocate to reinstate that position.
Other thoughts, comments?
So let me start out with the generality. or general thought process. If we had unlimited funds, I'd be happy to vote for the smaller classes for Duffy, the 8 other schools or 8 other sections that need to be established for the other schools to be comparable, as well as the counselors and as well as the position in question. However, I have a hard time doing something here that I would not do at home, nor would I do in a professional role or even when I was treasurer of the soccer league. I am willing to vote for this position because we got $118,000 back. And I don't really think it's a school position, but the results are phenomenal, and I'd rather have somebody who's doing a phenomenal job in the school system than say to the town council, take care of it, because I don't think it will be. So I'm willing to vote for it. I would also be willing to vote for the Duffy counselor, just because I don't see how we can get them all the teachers they want. Maybe that would help. But I don't really want to go by the 5.8%, which is already significantly higher than inflation. And I feel it's important to treat this like I treat everything else. So I'm willing to vote for.
Gail.
So I was moved by the community's support of this position as well. I understand how important this position is to the community. I do have a question as to why this is not being funded by the town. I don't really see this as a school position. I see this as more of a social services position. And given that our budget is so tight, the fact that we are sort of taking on extra positions that to me seem more in the line of social services makes me question, why this is being put into the school budget. However, given sort of in line with what Ethan's saying, that the town, may or may not be able to pick this up or won't pick it up, I would also be willing to vote in favor of this position right now.
Ethan.
Could I just add one thing? What I do hope happens is right now it seems like it's a position without a home or sort of an S or temporary position. My hope is that the school system figures out how to make it a permanent one if we vote for it, in as much as anything's permanent, just because it wouldn't be fair to the Amanda, I don't remember her last name, or the students there to have her come in this year and then be back on the chopping block, so to speak, next year. If we're going to do it, we should do it with the intent to make it permanent.
Sure, I was simply going to say, by virtue of putting it into the general fund, I mean, there is the thought of permanency to the extent to which in any given year, when we have to evaluate where we are overall with anything, but certainly when it was in the ESSER, the sort of the expectation was, hey, we were creating it new, or really upgrading it from an hourly position to a full-time position while those ESSER funds were available. So as you as a board choose to put this, if that's the direction you move to put it into the general fund, that would be the understanding.
Claire.
And as a follow-on to what Gail said, I had mentioned that before. I really understand how this is so important to a young family with school-aged children. But again, I wonder about social service liaison for our elderly and for a family with an infant and for families without children. This whole liaison, when you have such language barriers, is so important. But, how do we help all the people? And I do wonder why it's a school position, because it is social service liaison. I do think, though, you can reach more people within a school that being at town hall, they wouldn't be as powerful.
Any other thoughts or comments? With the motion on the floor, I will share that I too am in favor of reinstating this position for a host of reasons, certainly with what my colleagues have shared, but also with respect to what the community has shared. And I think it's important to respond proactively versus reactive. And all that took place during COVID reminded us, rather, we were reactive in many ways, but it also gave us an opportunity to see how moving forward we can strive to do a little, move in a different direction. And so, yes, Gail, that's all right. I'll pause. Go ahead.
I just wanted to ask, and I don't know if you would know this, Paul. I mean, is there, because my concern is that, Ethan's advocating that we make this a permanent part of the budget, and everything that we make as a permanent part of the budget obviously increases the budget. So is there a way to make this particular position part of the town as opposed to part of the school budget? And I'm not even necessarily saying for this year, but just...
No, it's a fair question. I was, I've heard the question twice, like how come this doesn't live within the town? And in fairness, I can't say that we've gone down that avenue, and certainly we can. I think, when we think about it, the nexus of control, when we can say, this is the position. When we came up with this under ESSER, and when we previously had it multiple years ago under a different grant system, it was based on, kind of our nexus of control or our locus of control. We knew where we had some greater need, and we can establish that. I can certainly engage with the town, and so I certainly don't want to paint a picture that they're unwilling. We haven't asked the question at this point, and there's benefit, in either direction. Certainly, you can make the argument that a lot of the services are things that would fall, they're different than what we call a social worker under our teacher contract in terms of typically there are hours of service hours related to a student's individualized education plan, and this is more familial support. So that can feel like a town function. There is some benefit, if I'm being honest, to us being able to kind of direct those services, direct those hours, direct the location for those services based on our assessment of need, as opposed to and have that live within the schools. But at the same time, this would be a great expansion for town services as well. So it's something that I would certainly not shy from investigating with the town. It's certainly nothing I can promise on their behalf. And in terms of permanency, like I said, everything's as permanent as the board so chooses in a given year. There's always opportunities for us to reevaluate and assure that we're getting the return on investment that we need, and where do the priorities lie. And so priorities, the priorities for this certainly came to a head during the COVID years. It was something we would expect to back off. There's clearly an impassioned plea from the community now. Will that need increase to additional schools? Will that need decrease? Will that need level off? That's difficult to say in this moment in time, but our role would be, we'll always kind of come to you with our best assessment of the needs of the community and the schools. I don't know if that answers your long-winded answer.
All right. Unless there are any other comments, we can...
I had just one thing.
Sure.
So I understand that Amanda does work outside of those two schools, that there are times that she helps families in other schools?
Yeah, when the position was first started, the homeschool liaison position was funded through the Title III grant, the ESOL grant, and did work really across our ESOL population, across multiple schools. When we put it in under ESSER, and certainly there was an expectation it would be concentrated at Smith and Charter Oak, but we're not, we don't contain it. We don't say, hey,
Right.
No fair, you can't talk to that family.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, with respect to the motion to reinstate the home to school liaison position, we'll do, although we verbally shared our thoughts, we'll do a roll call vote just to ensure we're clear. And Charlotte, please, a roll call vote.
Mr. Gagnon?
Aye.
Mr. Goldman?
Yes.
Dr. Harris?
Yes.
Ms. Merrimon?
Yes.
Mrs. Nezarella?
Yes.
Dr. Thomas Farquharson?
Yes.
Mrs. Yagaloff?
Yes.
Okay. So that has been reinstated into the budget for consideration when we vote on the entire budget. Before moving on to other pieces to consider, I do want to acknowledge the formality of what you shared, Mr. Vicenius, with respect to the retiree reimbursement amount, the healthcare, pardon me. And I do believe we need to make a motion and second in discussion to formally adjust the numbers to account for the $250,000. So thank you for typing it there, Liz, to help with the motion that will, yes.
Is it 250 minus 132, or just two?
No, different programs.
So we're going to accept the positive and reject the negative?
So we're doing one at a time, and so one at a time, and the first piece is with respect to the retirement. Right, okay.
No,
Healthcare, pardon me, healthcare, pardon. All right, so
we don't get to vote, though. I say no.
so seeking, making a motion to reduce the healthcare appropriation due to reduced premium rates. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Jason. Discussion. So again, what? We just have to be formal, and so because there was an overestimation of how much it would cost for this,
Yeah, if I may.
Yes.
So when you look at your formal budget book and we go to the page or the line item that identifies the amount of money within the budget that we've recommended, which creates the $201 million budget, et cetera, there's a bottom line figure. And so what you're doing now is saying, hey, you can reduce that bottom line figure on that particular line item by $250,000 based on this reduced premium rate projection. So you're basically giving us permission to change what we initially came in with.
Well, a little discussion with the motion on the floor. I don't want to assume.
I like
discussion?
Okay.
No, well, no. We're going to do a roll call vote. Just want to make sure. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Gagnon?
Yes.
Mr. Goldman?
Yeah.
Dr. Harris?
Yes.
Ms. Merrimon?
Yes.
Mrs. Nezarella?
Yes.
Dr. Thomas Farquharson?
Yes.
Mrs. Yagaloff?
Yes.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. All right. Other thoughts, suggestions, things to account for with respect to the budget?
Should we do the other bad one?
The excess cost that's putting it back up.
Yes. So
Get it over with.
who would like to make that motion?
I'll make a motion. I make a motion to add the continued deficit in the excess cost sharing of, was that $132,000? And
So on Liz's line, so it's the excess cost deficit that's creating a need to potentially, or creating the opportunity to increase the appropriation that we put for out-of-district placement. So our excess costs are generally not, the majority of them are going to our out-of-district placements. So in your budget book, we have a line item for out-of-district placements, and so if you wanted to increase your appropriation, then your motion could be related to increasing the appropriation for out-of-district placements.
anybody second?
I'll second, but I had a question. So I'll second.
Second. All right. So thank you, Claire. It's been seconded. Jason, discussion.
Paul, is there any real practicality of saying no to it? I mean, you either pay now or you pay later.
Well, I mean, with all of these, they're estimates for the upcoming year. So certainly we do not anticipate in any way that, at least at this time, that our percentage reimbursement from the state will go up. And certainly our costs seem to be going up, but there is a recognition that all of these are estimates based upon the number of students we outplace, what schools they're at, the related tuition, et cetera.
Yeah, but it's your best guess at this point in time.
Yes, this number reflects the additional shortfall this year based on what we're actually getting. And since for next year, we based our budget on that 68% and we're only getting 66.7, this would change my estimate for the upcoming year as well. But again, it is an estimate.
So I accept that it is what it is, but I also feel as a board, we're not allowed to lobby the state, but as an individual resident, I am. Is that correct?
I'll actually get back to you on if you're looking for a legal answer,
Okay.
I'm not going to prepared to provide
So
that to you.
I guess what I'm saying is that for 3 years that I've been on the board, this has been an issue, and it's been an issue way before I came on the board. And any individual in West Hartford that follows any budget meeting can advocate. We have some great representatives. This is not right. It's not right that this is 4 times the cost of a general ed kid, and then they're saying
4.5,
that the excess cost beyond that is supposed to be 85, and now it's 66?
6.7, yeah.
Yeah, so
And
I'm just saying, what is it that,
Well, I was gonna refine my earlier, lack of an answer and say, the CABE, the Connecticut Association of Boards of Education, they have a voice and they have a very specific lobbying function as well. And I think that, all Board of Education members would be, urged to, engage with CABE and engage with the CABE lobbyists to help support that. But your larger point that this is not just a West Hartford issue. West Hartford as a school district, because we're a sizable school district, we're significantly impacted. I think, Liz, you had done some research. I think that we are 4th in terms of magnitude of impact from a dollar amount relative to all schools in the state because of the number of students that we have that have out-of-district placement needs. 169.
Yeah, so it's 4th out of all the districts in the state. There are only 3 districts that lose more money than we do based on this cap.
Gail.
Yeah, I wanted to sort of piggyback on what Claire's saying, kind of go a little bit in a different direction. I mean, since Lorna, Claire, Ethan, and I are sitting here, which is about 3 years, the budget has gone up almost $25 million, maybe a little bit shy of that over 3 years. And it just doesn't really seem that it's going to be sustainable, particularly with the costs that we've talked about with, special ed and all that. And I think that, if we're not going to be able to find the funding from the state, I mean, eventually this is just going to simply not be a sustainable process. I mean, $25 million over 3 years is a lot of money. And, the taxes in the town have gone up 5% this year. I know me and you talked a little bit, maybe they won't be 5%, but right now they are 5%. And it's just going to, impact people in a way that becomes basically unsustainable. So, the fact that we should be getting money from the state and aren't getting it, is creating basically issues within our own community that, are going to have to be solved one way or the other going forward.
Other thoughts? So I say with all due respect to the situation that we're in, we know historically the reimbursement has not been as it should be. Ideally, it should be 100%. But we know that we, at least we're anticipating 85%. But as we know, then last year 68%, and now 66.7%. And in spite of not being reimbursed the amount that we are due, we don't settle and we continue to strive and excel. But nonetheless, it is challenging. And so here we are again with this. However, with the motion on the floor to account for, oh yes, Shannon.
Just to, I guess, put a period on this conversation, could we request that our state delegation come to a future, I mean, it's too late for this legislative session because the appropriation committee is meeting for the last time tomorrow, but could they come here and we could have this conversation explicitly so that we're not spinning our wheels? That would be really, it would make me feel like we're moving towards something productive.
Yes, certainly we can invite our state delegation, and I think that creates a more public forum for a conversation. I would want to share with you, share with our public. Obviously, we're in touch with our state delegation in and around this. I know our town council has been in touch with them in and around this topic as well. So it's, I certainly don't. I want to give credit to the conversations that are happening, but I think, to your point, making it keeping our public informed and making it a more robust conversation is something if the board so sought such an audience, we could certainly invite it.
Welcome that. And I do want to say, and you alluded to this as well, Paul, that with our delegation, Senator Slapp, Representative Exum, Representative Farrar, and Gilchrist, they do advocate for us. There's a lot that happens behind the scenes that we are not aware of, and they certainly know this is one topic that certainly requires a lot of advocacy in terms of us getting the reimbursement. So rest assured the advocacy is happening, however, with opening the lines of communication so others are able to be aware of that, certainly support that and anticipate they would be willing to do the same. Any other comments regarding this motion on the floor? All roll call vote, please, Charlotte.
Mr. Gagnon,
Yes.
Mr. Goldman,
Reluctant, yes.
Dr. Harris,
Yes.
Ms. Merriman,
Yes.
Mrs. Nazarella,
Yes.
Dr. Thomas Farquharson,
Yes.
and Mrs. Yagaloff.
Yes.
All right, so that motion passes. So far, all of the motions have passed. Any additional suggestions or thoughts? So looking at the budget, thank you so much, Liz. We're able to see real time the check and balance of the budget, and we still are within the original percentage of 5.8%. 8.3. There's, yes, 8.3. Okay. Other thoughts, comments, suggestions?
I would like to make a motion, I guess it kind of, think going back to what Ethan said, if we want to try to stay flat, my preference would be to advocate for restoring some of the counselor positions, recognizing that we need to consider something that's kind of a compromise. I was looking to propose 3 positions to be reinstated, which, based on the new information on the excess cost for special education, would put us a little over. But I think the case, and so that's my motion, and then I can elaborate. So my motion is to reinstate 3 of the elementary school counselor positions.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion?
Oh, discussion, yes, sorry. So, there's no right answer in this situation in terms of the number, so I think I'm interested in the discussion. But in my mind, we've had the 5. I think moving to the 3 starts to think about something that is a plan of kind of ensuring coverage, but without overwhelming the budget at this time. And I think, again, related to thinking about impact and return on investment, when I think the school counselor position is such a proactive role at a time when we have a real mental health crisis that I truly believe has worsened since COVID. And we're, as others have mentioned, starting to see the aftermath of that that's kind of played out over time and gradually with students. My own experience with my children, kindergartner who didn't have a real class experience for 3 years of her educational life. And so I think having those positions to proactively get ahead of issues that are arising around mental health, behavioral actions, social emotional considerations, and I think it pays dividends in the long run so that you have ultimately cost savings relative to avoiding increased disciplinary proceedings, additional outplacements, potentially impacts on overall school culture and climate, and impact on the learning of classmates, and then also potential resulting litigation. Those things are super expensive. So with the investments in these positions, I see a huge return for ensuring a really proactive and student-centered environment for our children. And then I do think we've had a lot of feedback from the community about how much of a workload it's been on the school psychologists and the social workers, and the abrupt removal of these positions while we were anticipating it going from 5 to nothing. It will be a shock that will increase their caseloads to a point that are unsustainable.
Jason.
There we go. So I seconded this motion and am in favor of its passage. As with the family engagement coordinator position, we've received strong outpouring of community support for these positions. And I think that just highlights the ongoing need that as we continue to recover from the COVID pandemic and its aftermath. I think keeping these positions is important, especially at this time as we transition to a new model for school administration, as we bring on the assistant principals. I think the counselors will be there as a resource for them as well. I believe that those positions will make that transition easier, and will continue to provide the needed support for students and families that we've heard so much about over the last few weeks.
Gail.
So I appreciate the motion, Shannon, and I understand, that we've had a lot of outpouring about this particular position, these particular positions. It's going to be very hard for me to vote to increase the budget that amount of money. So I'm wondering if you would consider a lesser number of counselors so that I'd be more able to support that as opposed to 3.
And perhaps I could just add that our estimate for each position, salary and benefits, is $102,000.
I mean, let me just say one other thing. I mean, we've had, an outpouring on the students, with the Duffy situation, no less than we have on the counselors. And every position that we were forced to eliminate, is obviously important to our district. But given the amount of money that this budget has gone up, and that feeling that hard decisions were made by the administration as to what was a need as rather a want, I could support the motion, but I would ask if you'd be willing to consider less than 3 counselors.
I think that's the part where I'd like to see where there might be an opportunity to remove a cost that then could better make this more palatable. And so I think it's sort of looking back at the whole picture once we know any other motions that are being made.
Okay, so I just want to understand, so you're looking to add in the 3 counselors, but to remove something else?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, there's one thing that I know we talked about last time that I would hope might be raised, and we'll hopefully get to that as a conversation, is something that would restore funds to the budget.
So the only question I'm asking, and I guess this would be a clarification, is if we vote first on this, and then we pass this motion, but then we don't pass the motion to make the change that you're talking about, then
could it be
what I may suggest what I may suggest, if we do go that route, is to table this motion to proceed to other motions that may impact how we conceptualize this one. But let's first continue with discussion. I know that Claire, you wanted to.
Yeah, I think we're tabling the vote, but we can still have the discussion. So I have a couple questions about this. If I understand correctly, the counselors, when they came in, they collaborated with teachers and developed lesson plans and systems that could be turnkeyed. Is that correct?
So the counselors did. There's certainly collaboration with teachers, but we had a Kim. I'm gonna space on what title we gave her. What was Kim Doyle's position's name? Mental health coordinator, who helped basically organize the elementary school counselors and worked with them collaboratively to develop lessons, kind of develop a quasi curriculum, if you will. There's certainly then working in collaboration with the teachers to be able to identify the students, to be able to identify some of the hot pockets of need, what were kind of some of the obstacles that kids were facing relative to their dysregulation, what were some of the triggers that they were seeing relative to behavior, and the counselors stepped in and kind of came up with a series of lessons, and working through Kim had kind of streamlined what the delivery of that would look like. So moving forward, yeah, we have based on, if you are to vote to reinstate counselors into the curriculum or into the program, we do have a curriculum, a series of lessons, things like that they would be able to operate from and turnkey. And if not, certainly there are also, those resources and materials that we would be able to provide, if I understand your question, that we'd be able to provide to either our teachers or our other clinicians to help support their work. Not that they're not already skilled with that, but just, some freestanding resources that are at the ready.
Right, so there is some they've been there 2 years, correct?
2 years.
2 years. So in that time, they've developed things. So and the reason, so there's 5 positions and a coordinator. Are we talking about the proposal in the budget is elimination of 6 in total positions?
Yeah, I didn't mean to muddy the waters. The coordination position you haven't discussed has not been recommended to be continued alongside the counselors, and
they just don't have 5 counselors under them anymore.
Correct.
Okay, so it's the 5 counselors. So
that coordinator position doesn't exist in the budget. It was part of ESSER as well. Make sure I'm clear.
Oh, so that position's gone.
Correct.
So that's also being eliminated.
Correct.
So a total of 6 in that.
Relative
vein.
to this function, yes.
Okay. So I think they played a critical role in the last 2 years as behaviors have increased in the non-special ed staff. And it is very hard for service providers with hours to service. So I do think it's good to, if we can budget not eliminating all of them, it is good to have that time. I do think that the assistant principals in a curriculum specialist role doing the behavior work is really out of their job classification. I don't even know if we've violated teacher contracts with some of the things, because I know some curriculum specialists have taken on admin roles, have taken on roles with behavior management, just because you're there and maybe the principal's out. So I'm in favor of the AP position, but I also think the counselors keeping some can help that transition. Is it possible to, just like the position with the liaison, is this a permanent position within the thing, or can you add a year more in the budget of that position to help the transition?
So first, with great respect to my colleagues over here, am I right? We'd never wantonly, knowingly violate the teacher's contract. And obviously behavior, at a tier 1 level, is a responsibility that we all share. But related to your question, these positions, and when we started them, we did have a good conversation with our union. We expected and certainly tried to communicate very transparently with the folks that we were hiring that these positions were grant funded and that the grant funding was, had a 2-year span on it. But they are tenure track positions, and our union, worked with us on that and made sure to educate us that, this is not an interim contract. This is a provision that would be tenure track. And so while I sort of hear your question, is this a permanent sort of a thing, or is this a step down plan? I think that's a budget kind of a question. But then, as in terms of how the contract worked, the contract would the contract prevails as teacher employment. So anyone who's in this position would be on track for a 10-year position. And if at any point in time we're looking at this from a budgetary point of view and make the decision that we're going to step down the number of positions, whether that's part of a planned, reduction or attrition, or whether that's, just a function of, significantly decreasing enrollments, et cetera, there are clauses within the contract that deal with reduction in force that tell us how to work with the individuals there that are impacted. And our goal would always to be as transparent as possible with anyone, should that longevity be a question. So, but the one's an apple and one's an orange. They're related,
Right.
but they're not the same.
So I have a question about, in a tiered approach for academics, do the teachers manage Tier 3 goals monitoring, and would also teachers manage the behavior Tier 2 and Tier 3 plans for the SRBI?
So I don't know if I fully I'm going to grasp exactly what you're asking with that, but I mean, our teachers obviously are always helping to support and manage students like on a regular basis. But as needs increase and students move up a tier, require more support or might require an intervention. So depending on what that intervention might be, if I am to a point where I need an intervention that I'm working with a specialist, the specialist may have responsibility or potentially may share responsibility. Certainly with behavior, we have things, called behavior BIPs, behavior intervention plans, and things of this nature where there are specific plans that the teacher will help implement, but is not necessarily responsible for solely for creating. So something that might get created with a specialist and observed. So it can be a shared thing. It sort of. And it can vary based on the individual circumstance with a child too. So it's a very complex question that you're asking. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to answer it.
And I've never worked in a school with counselors. I've never been in an elementary school where there's counselors. And so it was a wonderful addition during ESSER to add this. But minus counselors, how do you deal with a student that you've tried you have your Tier 1, you've tried Tier 2, now it's Tier 3, they're not special ed, but you now need to come up with a behavior plan. But before ESSER, the funding, we did not have counselors.
No, fair question. And so, and we were cautious with that when we brought counselors in. We didn't want the expectation to be that, something that was always my responsibility is no longer my responsibility. But we did, at the same time, bring them in during a period of time when we did see an increase in student dysregulation. So it was definitely a support that we brought forward in full view of something we were struggling with. But at the same time, we weren't trying to say, oh, well, behavior is no longer a responsibility. And of course, no teacher would ever think that. That's obviously something they do from day one, is setting up that school and classroom community, establishing those norms and working at those relationships. But it kind of drove, let's make sure that we were smart about how we were using the counselors. I heard many of our public talk about lunch bunches, talk about, the opportunity to engage with students in small groups that are often intended to be proactive and not reactive, so they weren't, part of a punishment plan or part of a corrective behavioral plan. They were often trying to be more on the proactive side, helping, being an extra set of hands to build community, to find things, and again, to work around, potential trigger points, things like sharing, taking turns, things of that nature. It's something that we've always done. It's something that we will continue to do. It's a resource that, as I've said, I'll never say they aren't value added. It provides us additional support. It's a question of it's the question at hand. With the budget as it is it something that we feel has moved into a need category or not? And if so, at what level? So that's the conversation I'm hearing.
Other questions or comments? Yes, LaToya.
I just wanted to say that I think it's important to reinstate these 3 counselor positions. We talk a lot about the achievement gap, and I think, West Hartford is a high achieving district academically. I've worked in districts where there were real achievement gaps. I'm talking about students 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade coming in 2+ years behind in reading and math. And living in socioeconomically disadvantaged communities, having food insecurities and housing insecurities. So, those aren't the huge issues in West Hartford. We have high academic achieving schools. I think the other gap that we have to focus on when we think about mental health is the opportunity gap. And that's basically that access point for students to be their greatest and be able to not just survive, but thrive. And having counselors in the schools really help with those social skills and making sure that we're not just producing good students, but good humans, because smart people make nuclear weapons. And so it's really important for us to have that mental health support to make sure that we're also nurturing, the personalities and supporting students in that way. Speaking as a parent who greatly benefited from counselors in school during elementary school for my daughter, I can candidly say it saved her life. And then just speaking as a former administrator in a school, where I ran a school from grades 5 through 8, decreased suspension by 85% and got rid of chronic absenteeism. That was done because I brought in 2 full-time counselors, and I also brought in 2, and this is something to maybe consider, I also brought in social work interns. I partnered with the University of Southern California and brought in a couple of interns from that department to kind of supplement, that, because we didn't have to pay them. So they were, earning their hours and supporting. And they pulled those socialization groups and then the counselors did their thing. And, as a team, we were able to really bring that community to success. And I'm talking about a community that was really struggling. So I have to say, I think this is really important that we keep these roles and think about how we can continue to, expand our thinking when it comes to the success of our students. It's going to continue to change as times are changing, and it's a really hard charge when we're talking about money, but I think, students first. And so I definitely agree with keeping these 3 counselor positions.
Other thoughts? Yes, Ethan.
So, as I said earlier, I walked in and still would like to stay at the 5.84%, but realize that may not be practical. I do want to know what's there. I'd be fine with 2 counselors. I will say my hill to die on, so to speak, which is probably bad terminology, is I do not, the pay for play is important to me to maintain in the budget as it currently stands. I think, and maybe we're going there, maybe we're not, but I think the extracurricular, whether it's arts, music, sports, are all very important. I know they were important to me growing up. I know they were important for my kids, and not necessarily sports. My kids did do some more of the acting and other things, and we only look at one part of the extracurricular and not the other, and it's just unfair to me. So I'm screwing up what I said before, I would be willing to go for 2. But I'd like to know where everything is, because otherwise, I understand. I'm just commenting. Thank you.
Other thoughts or comments? So as we have on the floor, the motion to reinstate 3 elementary counselor positions. However, there is a request to explore having it to be reinstating 2, and based on other topics of discussion may influence whether to go that route. So with that, we'll table this vote, if we may, and to move. No, I think I can just table, yes. And with that, we'll move on to other thoughts or suggestions. Gail.
I just wanted to, I've said this before, and I'm going to say it one more time. We are a high-achieving district, and, you know, we are known for that. But we are, as we've had presentations here within the last few months, the academic scores are sliding. The achievement gap between minority students and white students is growing greater. And what I would say is most people send their children to school in large part for an academic education and all the other things that we provide, including mental health, sports, music, art, everything else that I'm probably not even aware of everything else, but all of the other things in our school are also important. But the number one priority, I think, in large part, is to make sure that we are minimizing that achievement gap between white students and minority students, and that we are maintaining the academic achievements. So I just want to say that when we think about, you know, the kinds of things that we want to add in and the kinds of things that we want to potentially eliminate from the budget, that we should sort of keep this in mind as well.
If I may say, I appreciate that. Thank you. I do want to offer some clarification, if I may, and please correct me if I'm wrong, with respect to the noted achievement gaps. And from reports that have been shared with us, when they disaggregated the data, they actually found it was not attributed to race and ethnicity. It was more viewed as an opportunity gap. Socioeconomic status was a qualifier, identifying where those gaps were. So I just say that from an educational perspective, it's important for us to know when it comes to achievement gaps, it's not defined by race or ethnicity, it's defined by what opportunities are available to individuals and communities. And that's where we collectively can play a role in helping to address that. So again, appreciate that, because yes, we want to address those gaps, but it's important for us to be aware of how the gaps are defined. So thank you for the question, or the comment rather. Jason, yes.
So in order to fund the reinstatement of the home to school liaison position and the 3 elementary counselor positions, I move to eliminate the $217,500 subsidy to pay to play.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion.
So Ethan may not believe this, but it's not a motion that I make lightly, and it's one that I came to after careful consideration. I know that this motion is also not one without impact, and as the father of a competitive swimmer, I know all too well the importance of sports in the life and development of students. However, this contribution was not historically included in our budget and was included only as part of and as a part of the luxury that ESSER funding afforded in an effort to blunt the financial impact of the pandemic and further support families. Now, with ESSER funds expiring, I think it's important to reallocate this money in order to offset the cost of keeping the family engagement coordinator position and maintaining school counselors during the transition to the new administration model. We have heard the need for these positions, and with limited funding available, I think it's time to return to the prior model of funding for pay-to-play in order to meet these needs. A policy in which no student was ever turned away from a sport because of financial hardship. Faced with the choice between subsidizing pay-to-play and keeping school counselors and the family engagement coordinator, this to me is the right decision.
We had the motion and second. We're discussion now. Yes. That's all right. That's okay. Other parts, contributions to the discussion with the motion on the floor? Yes, Latoya.
I'll just add, because I seconded the motion, that for me it's a no-brainer. This between the family engagement coordinator and counselors, the mental health and well-being of our students is of the highest priority in order for them to be successful human beings. So, no-brainer for me. Thanks.
Ethan.
So to clarify, we had already put in the school liaison, and we had some money for one or two of the other, or one of the other, partially the other position. So it's not a total this or the other. I will say, and I'm not questioning your motives, it had come up before when I was here to start the first year. The comment was made, well, we're going to change the money, but we guarantee we'll get it back. And that didn't necessarily happen. I think sports are an important part of the school. I think it's a great experience for kids. I benefited from it. I know others have. I find it strange. And again, like I said, particularly one of my kids spent his entire after school in acting. So every kid has a different motivation. Every kid has different interests. I think we want to do as much. I realize people can say, I can't afford it. I don't know how often that happens. I think it's more likely somebody's going to not do it. I just think it sets a bad message, and I'm going to vote against it because to me it's part of the experience, and I want everyone to have a chance at everything. So,
Shannon.
I think I'm definitely an advocate for extracurricular activities and enrichment opportunities. I think the challenge with this is that it's one-sided. It's lopsided in the sense that it is for athletics and sports enrichment only, and it doesn't provide any kind of opportunity for those who might be interested in other activities. And so it's just a really imbalanced. I just don't know why we would do this for this particular enrichment area and not others. And then when we're weighing it against all of these other choices that we have to make, which are incredibly difficult, this just seems like one that, since the history was there, that already established precedent of being able to deliver on the promise of providing this for students and not standing in the way of anybody who can't afford it. That's still going to be available to students. So we're just returning it to the state that it was pre-COVID, and I don't think anyone will be the wiser for that, because those who will need the resource will still have access to it.
So my understanding is it's 50% of the fee. 50% still has to be paid by the family. And also, my understanding is there is not a charge for the acting or for other types of things. Maybe instruments, I think there's a rental, but other than that, if you do other extracurriculars, I'm not aware of another charge. It's only on the sports.
I will respectfully disagree that there are other extracurricular activities where there are additional expenses. It may not be a boilerplate expense, but there are means where families are to support the production of whatever activity that may be.
So my concern, in 2004, it was implemented, and many boards passed many budgets for many years, never taking it out, never making it not a fee. And so when COVID came, this opportunity to give parents in all income brackets this break in not charging for sports. It was a nice gift during COVID. It was known that it was because of COVID, it was COVID funds. And that was $420,000, I believe. So for that first year, $420,000 of the federal funds went to parents that, not a financial need. But if a parent came and lost their job. Even if they weren't on free and reduced lunch, the district would make an exception. They would just say, no problem. So it was always covered for anyone of need. And then during COVID, we covered 100% for the first year, went to about half the next 2 years. Well, no, the next year we went half, got the counselors. And then in the next year, for the first time in 17 years, 217,000 from the general fund went towards this. So I guess my question is, it was never a priority from 2004 up until the pandemic. And if it is a priority, I think it needs to be at a time when we're not losing all these federal funds.
I was wondering if I could just provide a little clarifying information. So currently, Ethan, you'd mentioned it's a 50-50 split. Actually, the families are paying $100 right now, and the general fund is contributing $75 per sport. And so even at the $100 fee for families, we do have people who request waivers. You had mentioned, do people really ask for them? And I happened to do the transfer today for the Hall High School spring sports. We had 692 participants, 53 families requested waivers, which were granted, and 72 families had reached the family cap, so also did not have to pay. So just kind of to your point of, whether these waivers are available for families who ask for them, I just wanted to provide kind of data on one season, one high school.
My comment was more, I'm not sure, or I think people are, I would think, are hesitant. It's like the soccer league gives a scholarship, nobody ever asked for one. So, just my experience.
Other thoughts or comments regarding the motion on the floor? Gail.
Yeah, I just have one comment that, we're talking about this as this was something that was sort of funded with ESSER funds. And that's true, but so is everything else that we're talking about. So we're talking about counselors that were also funded with ESSER funds. So, I feel that I'm just going to revert here for 1 minute, if everybody can just indulge me for a moment. We asked twice, or we made a motion twice here to have a finance committee so that we could work, through the year on the budget, and it was voted down both times. And part of the reasoning at that time, and I understand some of you weren't here when that happened, but part of the reasoning that we were given was that the administration, knew what they needed, and it really wasn't the place of the board to be telling the administration what they need. And that was done, 2 motions that were voted down by my colleagues here, or some of my colleagues here. So I find it a little unusual now that we're now in the position of telling the administration what they do need. The administration gave us a budget. They told us what they needed, maybe not what they wanted, but what they needed. And I feel that it's somewhat strange that we are now coming as the board and telling the administration what they need. Obviously, again, I've said this before, I'd love to keep every position that was ESSER funded. I'd love to, deal with the thing at Duffy with the size of the classes. But, I wonder why we as a board now are going to decide what the schools need when we've been told all along that the schools and the administration know what they need. So I just want to make that comment because I find it a little unusual that we're now adding money to the budget on things that we seem to think that the schools need.
Respectfully receive. Respectfully disagree with some points, but respectfully receive what was shared. And I think that that's the importance of this opportunity for discussion, to hear thoughts and to hear views. I think, I will say though, I do believe all along our intent is that we are charged with advising on the budget and advising our superintendent, who then filters down and advises the executive team and thereon and so forth. So it has not ever been we just take and do. And so I think that this is one of those opportunities where with the budget that was originally proposed to us at the beginning of March, we now are reflecting on that coupled with the suggestions, the needs, the requests to see how may we modify the budget. And with the line item on the floor with respect to eliminating the general fund subsidy for pay to play and hearing the comments that have been made, I will share that I receive also with what most of my colleagues have shared. I think that I appreciate, Claire, thank you for giving kind of the historical application of pay to play and recognizing that some years ago when it was no longer applicable because of ESSER funding that was awarded to us, again, as has been shared, we did not know at that time the critical needs of the student body. We did not know. And once you know, you can't unknow. And so once we knew, that's when we reallocated the funding accordingly. So here we are now at a place where we have decisions to make. The motion to eliminate this is so that it can be allocated elsewhere to address other things that we know, such as the mental health concerns of our students, which can be mitigated by supports of counselors, and so on and so forth. With that, though, before moving to vote, are there any other points for discussion with the motion on the floor? Yes. Now, you can't vote, but we certainly can hear you. Yes.
Just as someone who will be going on to play Division I athletics in college and who's also been a student athlete for the past 4 years at Hall, based on what Claire shared with the historical success of the pay-to-play program, it seems like the need for reinstating these 3 elementary school counselor positions is sort of larger than the need to subsidy this pay-to-play program from a student athlete who obviously cares deeply about the success of athletics at Hall, and that's just wanted to share my position on that.
I know. Thank you, Lamb. Well received. Other thoughts or comments? With that, if we may proceed to a roll call vote, please, Charlotte.
Mr. Gagnon?
Aye.
Pardon me, one moment. Was there a question? Yes. Correct, yes.
Still aye.
Okay. Mr. Goldman?
No.
Dr. Harris?
No.
Ms. Merriman?
Yes.
Mrs. Nazarella?
Yes.
Dr. Thomas Farquharson?
Yes.
Mrs. Yageloff?
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes. And so with that adjustment, we'll be able to see real time how it impacts the budget. All right. With that, may I have us to return to...
Any more issues?
Okay, well, we'll do that before we go. Okay, any other thoughts, suggestions, proposed amendments to the budget, or proposed additions or subtractions to the budget? I'll ask again. Okay, returning to the vote that was tabled to reinstate 3 elementary counselor positions, reopening the floor for discussion. Any other discussion with that?
Can we have a peek at the impact of that?
Currently, with all of those pieces on the floor.
Well, is there any way to see what the percentage changes? Oh, 5.87.
So if that were to be adopted as originally proposed, you would be, on an overall basis, increasing the superintendent's recommended budget by $55,500, which would result in an overall increase of 5.87%.
And the original amount was?
About a 5.84.
The original was
Okay.
5.84%.
Okay.
Real 5.
Yes.
My understanding is also that there's opportunity for at least $15,000 of grant funding to go towards the home to school liaison position, and it could be upwards of that. So my sense is that that differential will narrow even further, potentially. It seemed like that was a possibility.
I believe that was a possibility that the assistant superintendent was looking into. I'm not sure how that resolved.
Yeah, as I recall, we were going to earmark $15,000 of available grant funding under the Title III to return to an hourly paid basis for home to school liaison type services. So that funding, we could make that funding available to, subsidize that position. And then we are going to continue to seek additional grant funding for this type of service. And I can't promise any dollar value. But if we're successful, then that would be our goal.
Other points for discussion? Gail.
So I'm going to ask one more time, Shannon, if you would modify that motion to decrease the number of counselors. Because I don't speak for myself. I would like to be able to support it, but I don't want to go above that number.
Yeah, I guess I think of the whole picture of these changes, and the fact that there's an opportunity to secure grant funds for item 1, I would want to stay with the 3 and then let the town council come back with the response to that.
Claire.
I'm concerned with the current situation where 5 counselors have been dealing with 11 buildings. And to go from 5 counselors with 11 buildings, 3, you could do a couple days a week. But if you go to 2, I mean, that's one counselor trying to manage 5 to 6 buildings and understand and get relationships with kids. I think it'd be tough. I also think in the transition to the curriculum specialist to AP, you're going to find higher need in some schools and more support needed. So the counselors with, a position and visiting each school in a week time, I don't know how 2 could really address enough to help.
Yeah, I haven't, certainly haven't staffed anything out, as we would call it. Haven't worked with the team to identify what a partial reinstatement, what a reinstatement of 3 or 2 or 4 or 1, would look like. We developed a model for 5. We can develop a model for anything that the board proposes, but I'll share this much. Certainly, I've got lessons learned from our math coaches at the elementary level. We've had one, for a period of time, we had 1 math coach at the elementary level, and then we've had the luxury of having 2 math coaches spread across 11 schools. And you can't service, you can't spread people so thinly that they're going to be able to have a footprint in every single school when you do that. So my honest and transparent message more to the community than anyone else, but certainly to the board, would be that whatever the staffing level that you ultimately land on, I would be probably looking to create that secure foothold at a smaller number of schools, priority number of schools, potentially with touch points at other schools. And I'd certainly be, looking at school size and looking at needs within a school to help drive that, so it wouldn't be a singular factor. But to offset that, the supports that I want to continue to point to, for just transparency, not to argue in any direction, but just for the equity of supports that we would look to provide to all of our schools, would be the changing role with the assistant principals, would be the very qualified social workers and clinicians that we have across our schools. So dovetailing the available supports that we could make available through elementary counselors with those other positions that are in place. So that's how I wouldn't want to just have anyone leave with the assumption that you're just going to do 11 divided by whatever you have, and that was going to be it, because there would likely be some schools that would have internal support separate from the counselors, or would have a very limited footprint with counselors.
Other thoughts, questions, comments regarding the motion on the floor? Ethan.
It won't make any difference in the overall vote, but I'm voting against it just because I didn't want the money for pay to play, so it'd be disingenuous to use it.
Other thoughts, suggestions? All right, let us proceed to A roll call vote, please, Charlotte, regarding the motion on the floor to reinstate 3 elementary counselor positions.
Mr. Gagnon,
Yes.
Mr. Goldman,
No.
Dr. Harris,
No.
Ms. Merriman,
Yes.
Mrs. Mazzarella,
Yes.
Dr. Thomas Farquharson,
Yes,
Mrs. Yagaloff.
Yes.
the motion passes. All right, as we see things changing real time, other thoughts or suggestions for the budget? All right, with that, let us proceed to voting on the budget, and would like for us to, what I'm going to do, I'm going to go and just call everyone one by one for you to have an opportunity to share your thoughts on the budget and how you intend to vote, and then we'll follow that with a roll call vote. So first, Mr. Jason Gagnon, may you share your thoughts, please?
Thank you. First, I'd like to thank Paul and his team for just the amount of work that goes into this, the countless hours, receiving comments, revising budgets. It's a lot of work, and I know the person sitting right here is in large part responsible for that, so we thank you as well. But I also thank you that making sure that the needs of our students are the driving force behind the budget. As has been said before, I'd like to thank everybody who's come out and taken their time to make public comments, to be engaged, to have written to us. Part of what makes West Hartford, which puts us on those lists of top places to live, not only in the state but in the country, is the fact that we have such an engaged citizenry, and that was really on display over the last few weeks. I would be remiss not to mention the many Duffy families that have reached out, often passionately, about class size. These are important conversations to have, and I know you leave here, disheartened, maybe upset, angry, but please know that we have heard you, and it's my hope that going forward, your efforts lead to a more in-depth and broader discussion about class size and the options we may have as we move forward. This is a budget of needs. The first post-ESSER budget was always going to be difficult, but knowing that fact even years in advance didn't make it any easier. I've been thinking a lot over the past couple of weeks about the comment from one impassioned father that ESSER funds showed us that there were needs we always had but maybe never realized. That is true. I think we've realized that over the course of these many weeks. And as we move forward as a board and a district, I hope we continue to make strides in addressing those needs. I think this budget is a first step in that direction, and I'm confident it won't be the last, and so I vote in favor of the budget.
Thank you. Mr. Ethan Goldman.
I'd agree with Jason. Thanks to Liz and everybody else for all the work they did. There was a lot of time. I am concerned long-term about the sustainability of pupil services. That was do this from memory, but approximately 12% increase year over year. And I don't know how that's going to go in the future, particularly if the state keeps dropping the percentage. And as I said before, I wish we could give everybody what they want. I will echo what Jason said. I was very impressed with Duffy. I wish there was a more actionable solution. I am going to vote no on the budget just because of one line item, and I apologize for that, but the pay to play for me is an important item, and I can't vote for it.
Thank you. Dr. Gail Harris.
So I want to echo what Jason and Ethan said. I appreciate all the hard work that I know both Liz and Paul and their teams do putting this budget together. I think some of the comments I've already made, but I'll reiterate just a few things. I think the budget is basically unsustainable for the long term. I think that we're seeing a 5% tax increase in town. We've $25 million in the last 3 years, give or take, that we've increased this budget. I believe that what was in the budget was what the town needed and what we should have potentially gone with. I don't see that although I've said here tonight, every position that was cut by ESSER is important. And I mean, if we could reinstate everything, that would be awesome, the counselors and all the other positions. The issue at Duffy is an issue. It needs to be addressed. And I apologize to the community that we don't have the ability to do everything that was asked of us. But I cannot vote for the budget, and I'm going to vote against it because I don't think that we can increase the budget more than we already had with Liz and Paul. I'm not willing to go higher on the budget. I did ask my colleagues if they would amend their motion to make sure that we didn't do that, and that was voted down. So for that reason, I'm going to vote against it, though I do hear the community and I understand the needs, but I can't support a higher number than was in the original budget.
Thank you. Ms. Shannon Merriman.
So I just, again, want to thank all of the hard work that went into this. I know it's a year-round process. It never ends, and every time you think you've figured something out, a new item surfaces and that you have to navigate. And so to project what will be in the future is no small feat. And I've seen a lot of other school districts going through this similar process, and I'm so proud of how much thought goes into the work here in West Hartford, and I have such confidence in those who are none of these decisions were made lightly, and I know that so much consideration is put into what could be, while very much an identified need, some sort of unintended consequence that would occur if certain exceptions were made or changes were made. And so being mindful of that, I do agree that we need to keep checking in on this and looking at the impact that we're having to make sure that we're always focused on the need. It's art and science, and I think we need to look at results for students in disaggregated ways and by school as much as we can throughout the year, just to see if what choices have been made are getting the maximum results. I'm very impressed with the community and how much outpouring there was, just to see the thoughtfulness that went into all of the communications, both oral and written, about what the community sees as a need. And I think that that's the piece that was an added element to then our role, which is, yes, fully very much trust the superintendent and Liz and the team to identify the need in their first introduction of the budget, but then there's an added component of what the community is telling us that we may not always have eyes and ears in tune to. And so to hear that added commentary is what led to these amendments to stress that we are still, again, identifying the need. And there is more need now because of COVID. It's just a fact. And we're still going to discover more as we go. I do want to make sure that we're mindful of not getting to a point where it is completely unsustainable. So all the more important to continuously check in on where we're having results and outcomes that we want to see for all students. So I am very much supportive of this budget. I hope it is well received. And that we can continue to serve students the way they deserve.
Thank you. Ms. Claire Nessarella.
So I wanted to thank Paul and the team for a first budget. It's been a tough one. Over the past 3 years, each year we're losing more funds. So we've been cutting and cutting and cutting, and it's a tough situation. The hard situation's not over, and there's still more things, but the funding has dried up. I am very impressed with all the families and the people who've shared their thoughts, the emails. I haven't been able to keep up with all of them that came in today, but there have been an outpouring from the community. I am frustrated by the unmandated, unpaid mandates. just changing the post-secondary was a huge hit. There's just been a lot of things in the legislature. So as we all serve our community on the board, and some of you in the audience serve on different boards and committees, it's really important that we share our voice and speak up and let people know that there are things that are unsustainable, but we can't forget that we're talking about people. And so if the needs are there, if the crisis is there, if we have to outplace, we can't not outplace. But it is, the costs are crazy. It's a very hard thing to put together the budget. I hate disappointing people who are advocating for something. And I know that, I think it was 31 positions were cut. Is that 31?
If you're counting between Esser and, yeah, I want to say 40.
So with 40 positions cut, a rollover for our budget still is a 5.87% increase with what we're putting forward. And we don't even know if that will pass. So even all our recommendations and what we put together is what we're putting forward to the town council. I also appreciate my new colleagues. It's hard to come onto a board and have the budget be right away. But I am in favor of the budget.
Thank you. Ms. LaToya Yagaloff.
Thank you. Echoing the sentiments of my colleagues, just want to thank you, Paul, and the team for all the hard work. And also just for everyone that works within the schools, teachers, various school staff. Anybody working in education is on the front lines, regardless of what your position is. So definitely want to make sure that I salute everyone in that role. And I definitely, want to say that this was tough. And, the main reason that I'm sitting up here is because I wanted to sit in this space and represent communities who've been historically marginalized. And I think because, systems of racism and oppression are still alive and breathing in this country, I base my decisions off of what's going to be best for those communities as they're dealing with that crisis, which is like always here, always present. And so I'm definitely, I feel confident in making some of these amendments around making sure that those community members are supported and will continue to be supported. And again, understand that there were other needs and asks of the community. Want to say that, my heart was just full listening to the community come out, listening to young people come out, listening to families come out, especially families who are working 2 and 3 jobs. And it's really hard for them to come to a night meeting and advocate on behalf of their students and their families. So just want to recognize that, and also recognize that, our charge is we're up here as representation of the people. And so that's how I see it. That's who brought me across the finish line. And so hearing all of those different voices and testimony, it made it very easy to make the decisions around these amendments. So I do vote in favor of the budget. I want to thank my colleagues too, because it's been a lot, and it's been a lot of support in helping us understand, taking on this charge. So thank you everyone for your time.
Thank you. I share and echo the comments that have been raised. I first and foremost will thank our superintendent for your support in this process, your leadership, your first time proposing a budget. So, whoa. Thank you so much. Liz, of course, your leadership, and all of the executive team, thank all of you. I also want to thank our state delegation. We appreciate their advocacy, and certainly we continue to hear how there is a need for advocacy. So as they are still in the legislative session, yes, let's squeak that wheel. Let's squeak the wheel. So we thank them. I also want to thank our town councilors and our mayor, because we know that with whatever budget is voted on tonight, it does go over to the town council for them to ultimately decide. And that vote is April 23rd, I believe. And we appreciate how they're attentive to these conversations. They certainly know the needs of what we're advocating for, and they've been receptive before, and we're hoping they'll be receptive this time as well. And we appreciate their participation. But the persons who I want to most and foremost express appreciation for, and there are so many cameras here, I don't know which one to look at. I'm going to look over here, but look out in the audience there. It's to thank all of you. And I'm going to try not to get choked up in saying this. We do this on a voluntary basis, and we do it because we care. We do it because we're invested in the children in our communities, and we're not just talking about the children that we raise. We're talking about the children next door to us, the children that go to school with our children. We're talking about the children who maybe you have a household where your kids have grown up and you no longer have children, but you still are an influence to the children in your community. All of us are a part of this community. It takes a village. It takes a village. And so with the responsibilities that we have, the honor that we have as Board of Education members to establish a budget, as colleagues have shared, we do not take this lightly at all. This is a process that has been underway for quite some time. Yes, the past month has been robust discussion, but it's been discussion for quite some time. And because of the tragic event all of us experienced in 2020, March of 2020 with COVID, we knew at that point in time that, whoa, we have a road ahead of us. So we knew this day was going to come, and here we are. And yes, we've had tough decisions to make, but we take a holistic approach with making those decisions. And that recognizes what our superintendent and his team have shared. It recognizes what we see, what we are aware of, but it also recognizes mostly what you have shared and what you have expressed. And as our colleagues have shared, although all of the things that were requested were not able to be met, that does not mean it's forgotten. It just recognizes again that we have tough decisions and we have to pace ourselves. But it does not mean that what has been shared and expressed is forgotten or dismissed. I am voting in support of this budget. These are numbers. But as my colleague Claire so eloquently said, these numbers apply to people, to humans that one day are going to grow up and be sitting out there as adults leading us. So it's important for us to invest in them now because they are going to be leaders leading us in the future. And so with that, I will ask for our wonderful Charlotte to please call the roll to proceed with the vote.
Mr. Gagnon?
Yes.
Mr. Goldman?
No.
Dr. Harris?
No.
Ms. Merrimon?
Yes.
Mrs. Nazarella?
Yes.
Dr. Thomas Farquharson?
Yes.
Mrs. Yagaloff?
Yes.
The motion passes, the budget passes. So as shared from here, the budget now goes to the town council, and now it is for them to decide. We thank all of you who have contributed to this process, and we now will continue with our agenda for tonight's meeting.
Lauren, before we do so,
Yes, ma'am.
there is one more thing that we need to do, and that is since we eliminated the general fund subsidy for pay-to-play, we actually need to adopt a resolution to set the pay-to-play fee, both the per sport fee and the cap for each family. So prior to having any support from ESSER or the general fund, the pay-to-play fee was $175 per sport with a family cap of $700. So if that's what you would like to return to, that would be the motion. If there is a different amount, I will leave that to you, but we do need to actually take action on that.
Thank you so much. And so with that, make a motion that we reinstate a $100 per sport with a cap of $400,
No.
175, pardon me, 175 per sport with a cap of $700 per family.
That's the 2017-18 rate.
So again, I'll state the motion is to set the pay-to-play fee at $175 per sport with a cap of $700 per family.
Yes. And there's no, I'm sorry, yeah, there's no budgetary impact, but we do just need to take that action to set the fee.
Okay.
We vote?
And so that is the motion on the floor. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Discussion. Jason.
So for the record, that's going back to the 2017-2018 school year number?
It's actually, I think that was through 2018-19 or 19-20. I'm sorry, I don't have it in front of me. I don't know if you do. But it was before the pandemic. So the 2019-20 year was the last full year before the pandemic.
was set in 17, 18, but it went all the way to the
Until it
pandemic.
changed. Yep.
Thank you.
Other discussion, comments? Moving to vote. Charlotte, a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Gagnon?
Yes.
Mr. Goldman?
No.
Dr. Harris?
No.
Ms. Miramon?
Yes.
Mrs. Nezzarella?
Yes.
Dr. Thomas Farquharson?
Yes.
Mrs. Yagaloff?
Yes.
The motion passes. Liz, thank you for ensuring we're crossing our T's and dotting our I's. All right. Okay, with that, now proceeding to new business, which we do not have any of. Now receiving our staff communications and reports, where we'll have our superintendent's report. Mr. Vicines?
Very brief report tonight. I did want to, however, provide some celebrations. I wanted to give a shout out to the West Hartford Adult Education Program, a program we don't get to talk about enough. This program obviously offers critical academic programming and enrichment opportunities to our adult population here in town. And the advanced ESL class was recently visited the Mark Twain House after reading essays in defense of Chinese immigrants in 1877. There's a great write-up by Wee Ha, so I was excited to see that. And I wanted to share that the adult education program is going to celebrate its graduation activities for the National External Diploma Program, what previously, folks think of as the GED. And that activity will take place on May 2nd right here at the Town Hall, so I just wanted to give them some support. I also wanted to do a belated thank you to all of our amazing para-educators. Yesterday, April the 3rd, was National Para-Educator Day, and with all of our schools taking stock of the amazing contributions of this dedicated team who provide incredible support to our individual students as well as to our teaching staff. So I really wanted to give them a huge thank you. And it would be remiss for me personally not to mention that April is the month of the military child and the military family. So I want to provide my personal thanks to those who serve, those who have served, and all of the families connected to our military. A final note, our schools have been excited over these last weeks to really engage with our children and talk about the impending solar eclipse. And it's unfortunate that school will not be in session during the eclipse, but I know that we've sent, as recently as today, we've sent some information out that should be included in newsletters and such, and we'll get it posted on our website for things that families can look up if they have interest. For safety, however, it's important to mention that as exciting as this might be, it's very important for folks not to look directly into the sun. And so we have adjusted the times of our athletic practices and games in order to avoid the potential for any school-age children to kind of be out there unsupervised and do something which could cause them any permanent harm. So we're taking those measures to adjust those times to avoid some of that. So that is my report for this evening, pending any questions.
Thank you so much. Questions regarding the superintendent's report we received? Gail?
What time is the eclipse?
Oh, it's I want to say it's
2:30 to 4:30?
2:15 to about 4:30.
Okay. Thank you.
With a peak of 3:27. Excellent.
Other thoughts or comments? I have to say, Gail, that was quite a beautiful smile you had lit up asking that question. All right. Other thoughts or comments regarding our superintendent's report? Want to say thank you so much for sharing regarding this being Military Family Recognition Month, as we have 3 veterans here at the dais, you, Mr. Vicines, Ms. Yagaloff, and also Mr. Goldman. So thank you all for your service, and your families. Thank them for their contributions. Any other thoughts or comments? All right, thank you so much, Mr. Vicines. Moving on to staff reports and board discussions. I don't believe we have any. Now to routine matters, the financial report, where we have approval of the financial report for the period ending February 29, 2024, seeking a motion that the Board of Education approve the financial report for the period ending February 29th, 2024.
So moved.
Thank you, Shannon. Is there a second?
I second.
Thank you, Claire. Discussion. Who of the two of you is leading this discussion?
I do the short story.
All right, Ethan.
I'm better off without it on. Hold on. There was a net improvement or positive variance in terms of the general fund, 65,000 negative in terms of salaries, 100,000 positive in terms of purchase services, just in the professional service line. So year-to-date, we're looking at a positive 50,000 as of the end of February. If I go to the next schedule, the special funds, or state and federal grants, we're looking at a positive 441,000, 429 being on the, for the, primarily the IDA funds. And then in terms of special funds, negative impact, or the change for the prior month was a $100,000 reduction in educational service reimbursement, which was used to offset, I believe, the, some of the state funding.
The excess cost shortfall.
Yeah, so that puts it for a projected loss for the full year of 550,000. So that's one of the ways we're compensating this fiscal year by the state lack of funding. And then finally, the nutrition services has a positive 3,000,008. Of that, already allocated out is almost 900,000 in terms of equipment purchases, and that'll be used for both hall and then for Conard for the lunchrooms. Any questions? And I apologize for brevity.
That's all right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any discussion or questions or comments regarding our financial report? Yes, Shannon.
Just to confirm, that any surplus that exists at the very end of the fiscal year, is there a potential to carry that forward, or is it left on the table?
Typically, any surplus reverts back to the town. During COVID, when we had some unusual situations, we had set up a non-lapsing account for a couple of years because we had a large surplus due to school closing. But no, typically that does revert to the town. At this point in time, it's 50,000. We're basically at a break-even situation.
Other questions or comments? Seeing none, with the motion on the floor, all of those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? The ayes have it. Thank you so much. Moving on to approval of the minutes, where we have approval of the minutes of the regular Board of Education meeting of March 19th, 2024. Therefore, seeking a motion that the Board of Education approve the minutes of the regular Board of Education meeting of March 19th, 2024. Is there a motion?
I make the motion.
Thank you, Claire. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Jason. Discussion. Seeing none, all of those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? The ayes have it. Moving on to information and reports. Board members, do we have any communications and reports from other boards or organizations? Seeing none, other information and discussions? Yes, Claire.
I just wanted to do a shout out. Oh, sorry. I wanted to do a shout out. We participated in the Special Olympics this winter, and I wasn't sure how it worked for younger kids. And what I found out is that the inclusion program started taking the Special Olympics activities and bringing them into the school. And I don't know how many people are aware, but the inclusion programs within our schools, there's going to be a fair coming up in April for the elementary schools. The high school program, I think there's 160 kids in the high school unified theater. Last year they were 150. I mean, and this is, I'm not sure, but there might be 30 kids with special needs and 130 general education kids. And so this move from special ed to unified has made a big difference for both our general ed students and our special ed students. The kids still get the awards, they get the medals, they're so proud, but it's also allowing families to take advantage of these opportunities within the schools. And so it's not about driving your child to places and stuff. So I just wanted to do a shout out. I didn't realize this program shifted over years ago, but the high school is doing an amazing job.
I just want to thank you for bringing some attention to that. It is unquestionably, one of the most special things. So thank you.
Jason.
I just think we should take a minute to congratulate Liam, who is apparently going on to play Division I sports. I think that was news today for us, so congratulations. And whereabouts?
I will be going to Columbia University next year.
Wow. Nice, Liam. Congrats. All right. Thank you, Jason. Other thoughts or comments regarding other information and discussions? Okay, moving on to future business. Announcement of future meeting dates. Our next meeting will be Tuesday, April the 16th, 2024, regular Board of Education meeting at 7 o'clock here in room 314, followed by Tuesday, May 7th. May 7th, 2024, regular Board of Education meeting, 7 o'clock here in room 314. And then Tuesday, May 21st, 2024, regular Board of Education meeting, 7 o'clock here in room 314 at the Town Hall. Do we have a request for any future agenda items? Seeing none, do we have any visitors that would like to make a comment? Seeing none, we do not have an executive session, therefore seeking a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you, Shannon. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ethan. Meeting adjourned at 9:43.